Ho 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 everybody. I know there's no way this video releases by Christmas, but that's not the point of it. Animation has for decades been one of the best mediums for representing holidays. As seen in feature films and specials, also basically any animated series with over 20 episodes surely has one. The Simpsons even started out with a Christmas episode, and the Peanuts gang have probably even covered every holiday 3 times over at this point. While this video is made around Christmas time, and with holiday media, Christmas seems to be the most popular by a landslide. Just take a look at the Hallmark Channel, for instance. I wanted to take a look at Pixar's history in featuring all holidays. In some of the cases, they chose not to. We'll start with things kicked off in Toy Story, where the film wraps up on Christmas Day. Now, they only spend a couple of minutes here, but it does put a nice bow on the story as a whole, as they have the Green Army Men doing what they do best, as well as introducing Mrs. Potato Head and Buster to the series, though we don't physically see them here. I wouldn't by any means call Toy Story a Christmas movie, though I'm sure others would argue that point. While the Toy Story franchise would return to Christmas yet again 19 years later in 2014, in 2013 we saw them in a Halloween special with Toy Story of Terror. Now maybe it's completely wrong for me to include this one on the list, since even though it was released in mid-October and was heavily marketed around Halloween, it doesn't actually take place on or around it, at least so it seems. TV shows will have episodes similar to this around Halloween that just throw their characters into precarious or scary situations, and I guess a lot of horror movies are in the same boat by coinciding with the Halloween season. I do think there's a pretty engaging narrative here, starting with a mystery and turning into a totally different type of story, and I'll leave that one at that for those who haven't seen it, since I feel that might be the case for most. Toy Story did actually have a holiday special that took place on Christmas, well, 2 days after, in Toy Story The Time Forgot, which released in 2014. To celebrate the holiday, we have dinosaurs. Now, this special is actually able to give more of a meaning of the holiday vibe, primarily through one-off character Angel Kitty, which is a pretty funny premise since she is a Christmas decoration. But for the most part, its focus is on action-adventure, and they're able to get some pretty interesting set pieces in there. Both specials don't get talked about too much, so I'd say they're both worth checking out if you haven't already. Obviously, they both were made and marketed as holiday specials, but neither can only be watched at those times of year and are actually really strong for exploring more of the franchise's side characters, as in the former we get a focus on Jessie and the latter on Trixie. It is pretty evident that they could only bring back so many characters from the movies for these, but Toy Story is always fun. Reptilis Maximus is a pretty sick looking action figure, and I enjoyed seeing Combat Carl and Combat Carl Jr. voiced by Carl Weathers for the first time here as well. Are these the best representations of holidays? No, but with Pixar, we aren't really working with too much here, to be honest. Toy Story The Time Forgot is the closest we've gotten to a Christmas movie from the studio, which is something I've always wanted. I can't believe we actually got one of their movies to release on Christmas Day before we ever got that. Before Toy Story was Toy Story, and before it was even evil ventriloquist dummy Woody and Lunar Larry Buzz Toy Story, Pixar had planned to make a follow-up to their Academy Award-winning Tin Toy, though this time, through a television special with a Tin Toy Christmas. Now, this was initially to bridge the gap of the studio moving from shorts to feature films, as a full film is about 20 times the length of some of their earliest productions. Unfortunately, the budget really wasn't there from any broadcaster, so they went ahead and started focusing on features. We know the plot would have focused on Tinny being a toy from the 40s that didn't sell well, who finds himself unboxed where he wakes up in a toy store in the 90s, and goes on to look for his old friends, the other musical toys. It's kind of Woody's Roundup Gang in Toy Story 2 sounding, and it seems a lot of the characters in this were reused, with favorites like Wheezy and Lotso. Also, Tinny befriends a ventriloquist dummy, just like the early concept of Woody. I like the concept of this special. It's not something I ever see being revived, though. It is fitting seeing Toy Story get a Christmas special all those years later, though. Going forward, I'd love to see more specials and shorts from Pixar's franchises, as I believe that's been a missed opportunity with Disney Plus content thus far, being that now Disney has the use for giving out these big budgets. Going forward, I'd love to see things like Mike and Sully Save Christmas or an Elemental Valentine's Day special. They don't need to have a holiday theme, though I do think that idea does open up a lot of story potential from any movie. They could also create and showcase a fictitious holiday, of course. I primarily want to stick to productions in which Pixar actually had a hand in creating, though I'll briefly talk about merchandise, since there is one franchise that particularly stands out here. You'll see books highlighting Christmas, Easter, and Halloween with the likes of Toy Story, Monsters Inc., and Finding Nemo. A lot of individual stories are also told in collection books, but I feel like Cars really went the extra mile, as their books, Mater Saves Christmas and Mater and the Easter Buggy, both spawn diecast lines which feature original characters based on Santa, elves, reindeer, and the Easter Bunny, with the elf Clutch Kringle just releasing in the past few months. I do enjoy the Christmas outfits they gave the Radiator Springs townies and do hope that some version of these books can be adapted eventually someday, as they still show up in background material in Cars Land typically around the holidays. Now I could pull up every one of their social media posts with some cool festive artwork. There's a lot, and they're quite well done, but as you can see, there really isn't much in their productions. There's the festive lighting in Wally, and I'll point out how every fireworks scene in projects like Soul and the Dug Days episode Flowers could be on Independence Day or Labor Day. And we could take a look at some of those Monsters Inc. Monsters TV treats. There were some pretty funny tie-ins there, and our first Thanksgiving nod, but we're better off talking about Pixar's only holiday-focused feature film. Dia de Muertos, or Day of the Dead, is integral to Coco inside and out. The holiday which celebrates life and honors the dead isn't too well known outside of Mexico, though knowledge of it has been growing a lot more in recent decades. Though from my experience, it had never been highlighted in American media too much until The Book of Life came out in 2014. There were obviously comparisons when Coco was officially announced the following year, though those have for the most part waned in the years following its 2017 release, as they really weren't that similar in the end. I think the main criticism for Coco and really representing the holiday and culture best comes from not the film itself, but behind the scenes, when there was an attempted trademark in 2013 for Dia de los Muertos, which presumably would have been the title at one point, which undoubtedly was a misstep, which I'm glad didn't go through. I think the idea of Pixar exploring different cultures has been a massive highlight of their last decade or so, which I'd love to see continued. Hopefully they just learned enough from this controversy to know how to approach them on the business end. An aspect of Coco that I think makes it stand out amongst other holiday movies is that it isn't something I feel is limited to one time of the year, which could be due to me not celebrating Day of the Dead, or just the fact that the themes of life and remembrance are much more universal than Christmas movies being about the spirit of Christmas. That being said, I would watch a Pixar Christmas movie year-round without a doubt. It's also just nice to see Disney embrace the holiday more and more every year, though, especially at their parks stateside with new food offerings, and they even have a Friend is Up in Cars Land. I'd love to see more exposure put on some lesser known holidays in the future. Well, that about does it for this look into Pixar's history with various holidays in their projects. Let me know your favorites and which ones you'd like to see the studio showcase in the future. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season yourselves with a great 2024 to come, and I thank you all for watching as always. I'll see you next time, next year.